Let me ask you this. If someone compromised one of your AWS accounts tomorrow, would you even know about it? Or would it take you days, weeks, or even months to detect it? The thing is, even if you have a bunch of security controls in place, a lot of us don't enjoy spending days or weeks setting up monitoring and alerting, and even if we do, maybe we don't know what to look for and focus on. If that's the situation that you're in, then today is your lucky day because I'm going to show you a free and open source tool called the AWS Security Survival Kit, or SSK for short. The Security Survival Kit is a tool that was created by Zoff.io and made open source for all to use. Let's take a look at how it works and why you should use it as a starting point. If you're watching this, you probably already know that CloudTrail is an important service to enable as soon as you create a new AWS account. But CloudTrail needs other services to be effective. By itself, it's really just gathering a bunch of data that sits there in an S3 bucket for no reason at all. You need to be able to take its data and then do something with that data to notify you of suspicious activities. But to do that requires using other services like CloudWatch, EventBridge, SNS, Lambda, etc. And that can take a lot of time and effort. But to get you started with a really solid foundation, SSK deploys two separate CloudFormation templates that you can use to enable proactive security monitoring and alerting for your AWS accounts. It also works well with other services and complements using the GuardDuty service, so you can use this and then enable other services or other monitoring and alerting, and you shouldn't have any conflicts or problems, but if you do, you can always tweak and modify the templates to be exactly how you want them to be if there does end up being some sort of conflict. Now, I created a cheat sheet to help you understand how to use the SSK, so let's take a look. And if you're interested, you can download it directly from my blog post here, and I also have more AWS cheat sheets that are available at this URL. First, we need to understand the suspicious activities that the SSK is looking for. Now, there are, at the time of the recording, 11 main supported suspicious activities. The first one being root user activities, because no one should be using their root user after having created admin users. Next, we have CloudTrail changes like stop logging, delete trail, update trail. If anybody is running those commands, then it's probably worth looking into it. We also have AWS Personal Health Dashboard events. So this is when AWS sends out some sort of security or just maintenance alerts. That way you get notified of that. We have IAM users changes, such as creating users, deleting them, updating them, or even creating new access keys. That's definitely something that we should be notified of. We have MFA monitoring, so creating virtual MFA devices, deactivating them, or even deleting them entirely, etc. We're also looking for unauthorized operations. So anytime we get an access denied API call or some sort of unauthorized operation, we should be notified of that so we can take a look at it. We will want to know about failed AWS console login authentication. So anytime somebody is inputting an incorrect username and password, or just failing authentication in general. We also want to know about EBS snapshots exfiltration. We would like to know about AMI exfiltration, and then whoami calls. So if somebody is calling the get caller identity API call, that could be a very legitimate call, of course, as you're using AWS day to day, especially if you have multiple different accounts, multiple different users. This is an easy way to check which user you've currently authenticated as. However, whenever credentials become compromised, that's also going to be the first API call that an attacker is going to make, at least in a lot of different cases. So that's definitely one that we want to keep an eye on. And then finally, we are checking for IMDS v1 run instances and optional HTTP tokens, because ideally you would now be using IMDS v2 instead of IMDS v1 whenever you are running EC2 instances. Now, this means that anytime activities related to those services or to those actions are detected in your AWS accounts and the regions where these templates are deployed, you will receive a notification so that you can investigate it. And because it creates a CloudWatch dashboard, you can also quickly jump into your AWS account and take a look at what's going on with centralized logging and monitoring. Also, as I was recording this, the original author of this tool added a new feature that now also enables 3 security measures. We have block public access for S3, we have region level default encryption for EBS volumes, and we have account level restriction on public sharing of AMIs. These are all going to be very important defaults to use, and so that's why this tool automatically deploys that for you. Now let's take a look at how all of this is achieved by pulling up the code from the repository and then navigating to the makefile. From this file, we can see a lot of information, including parameters, but we're not going to mess with these parameters right now. I'll show you that in just a moment. Right now, let's scroll down a little bit to the account level security options. So from here, we can see the code that's implementing those 3 modifications. Let me go ahead and close this out so we can see more of this code here. But the first command that we're issuing is AWS S3 control put public access block. Then we have AWS EC2 enable EBS encryption by default. And finally, we have the CLI command for EC2 enable image block public access. And so that's going to give you all 3 of those secure by default settings. So all of that sounds really good, but how do we go about using it and deploying it? Well, first things first, we need to download this project from GitHub. So on the GitHub repo page, you can click on the green code button and then download the zip archive, and then go ahead and extract that archive on your local computer. Then we need to make some edits using our favorite code editor. For me, I'm going to use VS Code. Feel free to use Notepad or whatever you want, whatever is convenient. But from there, we want to make sure that we can access the makefile so that we can set our own parameters. And let's start with the alarm recipient, which is going to be the email address where you want to send your email notifications to. So for me, I'll just do christoph@cyber.com. This could be security at, support at, whatever you'd like. We then have a project name. I'm going to leave it the way it is. That's totally fine. Same for the description of this project. And then we have a local AWS region, which I'll set to US East 1 because that's my primary region, but yours might be different. We also need to set a CloudTrail log group name. This is going to be your CloudWatch log group name, which if you don't have one already, so if you don't already have CloudTrail set up, where CloudTrail is pushing logs to CloudWatch, then you will need to set that up, and I'll show you how to do that. And then finally, we can set the profile name. So if you're using the AWS CLI and you've set profile credentials via the AWS CLI, then you may have set a separate profile name than default, in which case you would want to change from default to your actual profile name. All right, so now let's go back to AWS and let's go ahead and create our CloudWatch log group. Go over to the CloudWatch console. Then in the left navigation menu, you're going to want to look for logs, click on that, and then click on log groups. From there, if you already have a log group you want to use, you can copy the name and use that. But for me, I'm going to have to create a brand new log group by clicking on that button and then naming it whatever I want. Here we'll name it AWS Security Survival Kit. We can select a retention setting. We have a lot of different options here. You can select whatever fits your needs. And then if you have a KMS key ARN, you can go ahead and supply that right here. I'm not going to do that for this, but this would be used for encryption. And then of course, if you want, you can add some tags. I won't do that. I'll go ahead and create this log group. All right, now we have the log group name. Go ahead and copy this and then use that in our makefile as the CT log group name parameter. Okay, and so now we're basically ready to deploy the AWS SSK. Before we do that, I just want to quickly walk you through what resources we're going to create. So let's scroll down just a little bit and let's look at the deploy command. This deploy command starts by activating the account level security that we saw earlier. But after that, it's going to run the AWS CloudFormation deploy command. That's going to pass in the template file of cfn local.yaml. That's going to be the local portion of the SSK. So that's per region. You can deploy this in each region that you use, that you also specify in this command. And then you pass in the rest of the parameters like stack name, parameter overrides with project name, region, etc., and then a couple of other options. Then you have a second CloudFormation deploy, but this time it's for the global template that's going to deploy resources globally. This is not per region. To learn more about exactly what's being launched, you can look at these individual files. These are the CloudFormation templates that you can run either via the CloudFormation CLI or via the AWS console. So let's actually pull that up by typing CloudFormation and search. And then we'll use their tool that they provide you in order to be able to see what's going on and what's being deployed. We're going to use their designer. Actually, you have to click on Create Template in Designer button in the center there. It's going to load that graphical user interface, and then we can copy and paste these templates. So if we click on that tab at the bottom that says Template, and then we paste in the template, we'll have to refresh the designer, and then there you go. You can see the resources graphically visualized that you're going to create, and we can see multiple different rules, as well as an SNS topic and topic policy. So that's the global template. Now let's look at the local template by just replacing what we had there. Again, refreshing the designer. And in this case, we see a lot more resources. We have a bunch of different rules, alarms, metric filters. We have a dashboard, the CloudWatch dashboard. We have the topic policy again, and SNS topic, which is what sends the alerts. So you can just visualize what's going on before you go ahead and deploy the SSK. And so there we have it. And we could actually deploy from this user interface if we wanted to, but let's instead use the CLI from our local computer. And I'm going to do that directly from VS Code because it offers that ability. But of course, otherwise you could do this in your terminal. I'm going to go to VS Code terminal and then new terminal. And from there, I'll run the command make deploy. It's going to start running through everything that we just talked about, but then it's going to fail. And the reason that it fails is because on this machine, I am running the AWS CLI v1. AWS has launched the v2, which has some slightly different commands and different approaches of doing things. And so that's why this is failing in this instance. So if you get an error at this step, it's because you're running version 1, and you can verify that by going in your terminal and typing in AWS -- version. And if you see 1 dot something, that means you're running version 1. You'd want to see 2 dot whatever. If you're not running v2, you probably want to upgrade now. There's really no need for you to stick to v1 unless you have some scripts or something that require that. But for most people in most use cases, you should go ahead and migrate. And so I'll leave documentation linked below the video if you would like to do that. But I'm going to do that real quick and then I'll come right back and we'll rerun this command and it will succeed. Okay, I've now updated my CLI version, and so I can go back and do -- version again, and we'll see that we're now at 2.13.21, although depending on when you're doing this, your version may be slightly different, but it needs to start with 2 dot. Now let's rerun our make deploy command, and it should work just fine. So we can see everything succeeded, and it's now deploying the CloudFormation templates, which is a really good sign. So we can go back to our console and go back to the main CloudFormation dashboard. And from there, we can click on the stack that's creating, and we can see more information about what's going on. And it's just another way of seeing what's being created in our account. We can see the logical ID, the physical ID, the type, the status, etc. We can also click on this icon to keep refreshing. So this is the local template, which is deploying right now in the region that we specified in the parameters. And once this is done creating, it will deploy the global template. The important thing to remember here with local templates is that you should deploy the local template to every region that you provide access to for your employees, contractors, coworkers, etc. Because if you don't do that, you're going to miss out on some of the monitoring and alerting for those specific regions. So if someone in this account is using Ohio or North California, Osaka, whatever it is, and you don't have the local kit deploying in those regions, it's not going to track those activities. It will only track what's deployed in the global template, not the local template. And so keep that in mind. It's very important. Okay, so now we can go back to the AWS console, hit refresh, and we'll see that our global stack is being created now. I'm going to let this complete, which will take just a few minutes, and then I'll be right back. We now have both of the stacks deployed, and as this was deploying, you probably noticed that you were receiving some email notifications. Do not ignore those because you have to subscribe to the SNS topic in order to receive alerts, because it's AWS's way of preventing spam, and so you have to subscribe to the topics. Go ahead and open up both of the emails that you received and confirm subscription so you can start receiving those notifications. Now at this point, if you're enrolled in my Introduction to AWS Security course, and if you've gone through the lessons about AWS CloudTrail, CloudWatch, and the demo of using CloudTrail security automation with CloudWatch logs and SNS, then you already have CloudTrail set up and it's already pushing logs to a logs group. And as long as it's the same logs group that you've set up for the SSK, you will start to receive notifications and you should be good to go. But we'll test that in just a second just to make sure. If you don't already have that set up though, then you're not going to be receiving notifications, and I'll show you exactly how to fix that. As a simple way of testing whether it's working or not, let's go ahead and run the AWS STS get caller identity command, which you will remember is one of the monitored API calls, and so this call should trigger an email. If it does not, then go ahead and keep watching. So if you didn't receive a notification, the most likely reason is that you either don't yet have CloudTrail enabled, or it is enabled, but it's not pushing logs to the log group that we associated with the SSK. Let's pull up AWS CloudTrail in the console, and if you don't already have an existing trail, then go ahead and create one. The steps will be very similar, but if you already have a trail, let's go ahead and click on it and let's edit the CloudWatch log settings. From there, we want to enable CloudWatch logs and we want to select existing, and then we'll copy and paste the name of the log group that we created for the SSK. We then need to grant CloudTrail permissions to push logs to that group. And so unless you already have a role that does that, we can create a new role and name it whatever we'd like. I'll go ahead and name mine CloudTrail role for CloudWatch example. And you can then expand the policy document toggle. This is exactly what permissions this will grant, and then you can save your changes. Now this will take about 30 seconds to a minute to complete, but as soon as it's complete, it will immediately start pushing logs to CloudWatch, and so we can go ahead and check it out. Click on the log group and you will see one or more log streams. From there, you can click on that stream in order to see all of the reported log events, and as you can see, it's a lot of data. We can then rerun our STS get caller identity command, and now we should receive an email very quickly informing us that this API call was made. You can not only see the API call details in your email, but you could also pull it up in CloudWatch for more information. And that's it. You've now launched the bare minimum proactive security monitoring and logging in your account, and this can give you a very solid foundation from which to build on. So if you don't like certain notifications or monitoring, then you can go ahead and remove that from the templates. You can make it your own, or if you want to add more, maybe you think this is not sufficient, maybe you want to look for more events, activities, resources, etc., then you can absolutely add that in here, either by creating your own metrics, by even modifying EventBridge. Really, it depends on what you're trying to do, but you have that flexibility. You can customize this template to your liking, and then you can redeploy, and that way you don't have to manually do this. You have infrastructure as code, but for your monitoring and alerting. If you like this video, don't forget to share it with a colleague who probably also needs to see this. And then also don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. I try to publish a couple of videos on AWS cloud security or other adjacent topics like DevSecOps, for example, a couple times a month. So don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.